Hey guys, for my year of rereading, I'm going to be talking about Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. Interview with the Vampire is the first book in Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles series. Louis narrates his tale of how he became a vampire, the centuries he lives through, and the other vampires he meets. It's a spellbinding tale of life and beauty and death and ruin as Louis embarks on a journey to discover the origins of the vampire. So, as I mentioned at the very top of this video, Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice is part of my year of rereading journey that I'm going on for the year of 2021. And yeah, I purposely, obviously, decided to read this book for October, to go alongside Halloween, the spooky time of the season, So yeah, and you guys, with just about every other book that I've been rereading this year thus far, Interview with the Vampire is another book that it's been way over a decade since I last reread. And yeah, I used to read it all the time, because I used to read it all the time in October, because I just always loved reading it in October, because it's just perfect, So yeah, I was really excited to reread this book. I've read it quite a number of times, and I always say this, I wish Goodreads had been around because I think Goodreads, I'm not quite sure when Goodreads started, but it's definitely been around since I think 2010, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it's like I wish it had been around like way before that, because it would have been so great to have a system like that to really catalog all of my books, because God knows how many books that I've lost or I'm not aware of, things that I've forgotten, and I think it'd just be interesting to know how many times I have exactly reread this book. So yeah, let's get into everything that I love about this book, because there's pretty much nothing I hate about this book. Let's be real, you guys. But yeah, everything I love about this book, I love the fact that as many times as I've read this book, it still continues to give me chills. It is just so good. I love the gothic horror of it. I love the way Anne Rice interprets vampires, what she kind of thinks vampires are, and I just really love just the world that Anne Rice has created. I loved being immersed back into this world. I love the complexity of the stories and the characters. It's a novel about life and death, and it's about beauty and ruin. There's a lot going on in this book. And our main character, Louis, who's being interviewed, as the title of the book suggests, I love the complexity of even our main character, Louis, because he is constantly questioning. I love the fact that he's constantly questioning, because you, the reader, are questioning right alongside him, because he's never entirely getting answers and you're never entirely getting answers. I love everything that he's questioning, because he's questioning what exactly are vampires? Where did vampires come from? He questions life. He questions death. What does that all mean? He questions the existence of God and Satan. Does God and Satan have anything to do with the creation of the vampire? Is the vampire inherently evil, or can a vampire be good, What does it mean to have an eternal, immortal life? What does it mean for humans? He's questioning like humanity. What is it what gives humans their humanity and whatnot? Can a vampire have that same sort of humanity at the end of the day? And that's what I mean about just the complexity of this novel. It really makes you think. This is not a book that you can just sit back and relax, have a chill read, It's not really that sort of book. I mean, I guess you could take it that way if you want to, but I think at the end of the day, this is a very complex, complicated book that's asking a lot out of you, the reader, which I appreciate, because it wants you to debate right alongside its characters. It wants you to debate psychology and philosophy with Louis. And so yeah, as you, the reader, are going on this ride with him. It's the same with the guy, the young man who is also interviewing Louis. Louis is narrating his tale to this young man. And you're kind of right alongside this young man as this story is being narrated, and you're kind of questioning all of that in the process. So I kind of like how that works out. And I guess the big deal, the big thing that Louis is trying to get across throughout this entire novel is that the life of a vampire is not totally ideal. And as we've seen through the decades, you guys, the many, many decades of vampire fiction, you know, there's so much in the vampire genre. Oftentimes in literature, especially recent literature, I feel like within the last couple decades, the life of a vampire is highly romanticized. Immortal life is romanticized. And I think that's a big thing that Anne Rice, even though this book was written, you know, when was this book written? 1976. I didn't realize this book was that old. You know, I think as I always think about the movie, because the movie came out in the early 1990s. So I think for some reason I always think this book came out maybe in the late 80s or something. But no, 1976. It's pretty old. But yeah, as the vampire genre, as I've kind of already mentioned, the vampire genre always romanticizes immortality in the life of a vampire, that it's just so like, oh wow, this is so great and cool, you know, vampires are awesome, sucking blood, you know, you get to be young and hot forever. And that may be well and good and all, but yet Louis, he is not here for any of that. Louis, he's actually fairly suicidal. For a vampire, he's fairly suicidal, and he's just constantly questioning his existence and just the existence of everyone else around him, and it's crazy. And more than anything, I think Louis wants you, the reader, and the man that is interviewing him, he wants you to realize that the life of a vampire is not all it's cracked up to be. It can be very mundane and boring. There's actually quite a lot of loss. There's a lot of despair. So let's move into the characters, because this book definitely has some very iconic classic characters. As I already mentioned, I've been talking about Louis throughout. Louis gets turned into a vampire, I believe in the 1700s. And yeah, as I already kind of mentioned, he is a rather suicidal vampire, but he doesn't have the strength to kill himself. He can't destroy himself. It's like he can sit and think about it, but at the end of the day, it's like, no, I can't do it. And Louis, when it comes to brooding vampires, no one does it better than Louis. What I also just really like about Louis as a character, I love his rationality about certain things. You know, as events progress throughout the novel, Louis is a fairly rational character. He's the most sane out of every damn character in this book, because some characters just go all wild and crazy, and Louis in the meantime is like, okay, everyone chill, let's relax. I love his rationality. I love his eagerness when it comes to that. He doesn't want to kill humans. He really has no desire to kill humans and just kind of perpetuate this never-ending streak of killing, you know? And more than anything, Louis desires companionship and love, and that's kind of actually another big theme of this novel, as well as, you know, this whole idea of companionship and love, and what does that mean, you know? Yeah, more than anything, he desires those things, and it's like, is he ever going to get those things? Then there's Lestat. Yeah, guys, let's talk about Lestat. I freaking love Lestat. Lestat, even though there are similarities between him and Louis in some ways, once you kind of dig into their characters, it's like they're more alike than they realize. Lestat is also heavily just kind of the polar opposite of Louis. Lestat just really hungers for the kill. He hungers for just going after people, just wild and crazy with wild abandon. He takes a perverse joy and pleasure out of the kill, and like taunting and mocking his kills and whatnot. He essentially enjoys the immortal life. You know, he pretty much loves the immortal life and all that brings and whatnot. But yeah, at the end of the day, once you kind of really do dig deep into the Lestat character, it's like he craves those same things that Louis does too. That he has his own insecurities, and he too craves love and companionship. So yeah, I love that complexity there with Louis and Lestat. It's like they're opposites, but more alike than they realize. And then there is the child vampire, Claudia. Yes, Claudia is seriously one of my just top favorite characters in this book. We find out Claudia, she gets turned into a vampire when she's 5 years old, you guys. And that is something I totally forgot about. As many times as I've read this book, I totally forgot that she was turned into a vampire that young. Because I think I always kind of think about the movie and, you know, Kirsten Dunst. I think Kirsten Dunst might have already been about maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, something like that, you know. But yeah, Claudia is a child vampire at 5 freaking years old, you guys. And Anne Rice, there are so many twisted, perverse, wild and crazy things that she does in this novel that's just mind-blowing. It's like, how did she get away with writing some of this stuff back in the day? But yeah, the fact that Claudia is a child vampire at 5 years old, I feel like that alone is just one of the most twisted, dark elements of this whole book. And what's so utterly fascinating about the Claudia character is that, you know, she does have these childlike characteristics, obviously. But the fact that she's a vampire, the fact that she is living through decade after decade after decade, she is still developing a fully functional, fully developed human brain, a human mind. She is able to think like an adult, behave like an adult. The only thing is, she doesn't look like an adult. And that brings a lot of darkness there for her character, realizations, because she realizes, it kind of takes a little while for her to process, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to forever look like a little girl. People are going to constantly see me as a little girl. They're never going to see me as anything more than that. And yeah, she realizes she's never going to grow up. She's never going to mature. She's never going to have the body of a woman. She's never going to experience things that other women get to experience. And that causes a lot of strain and stress and anxiety, and I think her own version of depression and whatnot within her, and just this anger and bitterness and resentment that she eventually feels for Louis and Lestat, that they dare do this to her, force this vampirism upon her and whatnot. And Claudia and Louis, once again, Anne Rice does some wild and crazy, just twisted things in this book. But yeah, one of the most twisted relationships, but also just bizarrely, I don't know, bizarrely lovable at the same time. It's a weird, you guys, you feel some weird things while you're reading this book. But yeah, Louis and Claudia, their relationship is very complex because they have a very father-daughter relationship. But yeah, as the decades kind of progress, their relationship does almost have this element of the two of them being like lovers almost. And they do that. They oftentimes will kind of kiss each other like couples do. But yeah, they never engage in anything beyond that. So it's a very complex thing. It's like we're father-daughter in some ways, but also lovers at the same time. It's very bizarre, you guys. And then we have Armand, who pops up pretty much near the end of this book, but he's still a very important, integral character. Is late into the book that he pops up in. But yeah, Armand pops up once our characters go to Paris, France, and Armand is pretty much like the leader of this little small group of vampires that are running like a theater company, and it seems like their big thing is, you know, every night they put on a production and they bring up somebody to, you know, suck their blood and kill them on stage and whatnot, and that's how they kind of get away with that. And Armand, whew, he is seductive, he is charismatic. Louis is just instantly drawn to this dude. It's like, forget everybody else that I'm acquainted with. He is all hot and bothered for Armand, you guys. And I mean, you can definitely see why. And the thing is, when Louis engages in conversation with Armand, Armand is giving him those things that he needs, because as I've already mentioned, Louis is just so complex as a character, because he's often debating just the psychology of a vampire, the philosophy of a vampire, you know, life and death and whatnot, and he's able to contemplate and ponder all these things with Armand. He finally has a listening ear, somebody who is willing to listen to him and engage back in conversation, you know, even though Armand may not totally understand or agree with some of the things Louis is feeling, you know. So yeah, Armand is like this opposite of of Lestat, you know, that Louis could never go to Lestat with these questions and concerns and philosophies, you know. So yeah, you definitely see the appeal of why Louis is so drawn to Armand throughout the whole end of this book. And then I guess our very last main character would be the man who is interviewing Louis throughout this entire book. This young man, really all we kind of know about him is that he is a young man and that he's a reporter, and somehow he's gotten in contact with Louis to interview him and tell his tale, you know. But yeah, we know nothing else about this man. We don't know his name, we don't know his age, we don't know anything personal or private about him, really. And yeah, the entire novel, Louis just refers to him as the boy, which is interesting. You know, the fact that he refers to him as the boy. Because, I mean, I think this is a young man, but the fact that he calls him a boy, I think in Louis's eyes, this man is just still a child to him, you know, and I think that's kind of why he does refer to him as the boy. This man just still seems like an infant, a child to him, considering how long Louis has lived for, because he's lived for centuries at this point, you know. So yeah, you guys, I can't repeat enough. I just freaking love this book. I adore it. It just gives me all sorts of chills. It's thrilling and exciting. It's very bleak, dark, twisted, and even though there's not a single sex scene in this book, you guys, which is hard to believe, because when it comes to vampire fiction, writers sure do love just to have wild and crazy sex scenes. But yeah, there's not a single sex scene in this book, but yet the writing and things going on, scenes where the vampires are, you know, killing or drinking blood or whatever, it's very highly erotic and intoxicating as you're reading, which is very fascinating. It's like Anne Rice manages to do all that without like any sort of sex scenes, you know. And once again, I just love the complexity of this book and the themes and the messages, you know, once again tackling life and death, beauty and ruin and whatnot. And yeah, this is definitely what I would consider like a smart a smart vampire book, you know, because it is asking you to debate and to question right alongside Louis. Yeah, no sparkling vampires in here, you guys. I do apologize to Edward Cullen from Twilight. I do love you, but yeah, you are no Louis, you are no Lestat, you are no Claudia. And yeah, at the end of the day, Interview with the Vampire is just a truly remarkable book. It's really thought-provoking in it, and I think it really engages you, the reader, to just come right along into this world. And I do think that this book, it probably can be very slow to some people. It could read slow, it could be a slow burn, and that doesn't particularly bother me at all. I do kind of like the casualness of this book, the casual pace. There's something relaxing about it, weirdly enough. And it's not a book that relies heavily on action sequences or anything. There's not really that much action going on in this book. It is very dialogue heavy more than anything. And I think too, just a much more internal book. You know, it's a very internalized book, I guess you can say. Not flashy and all up in your face and everything as you're reading. And yeah, I do gotta throw a quick shout out to the movie version of this book, which I actually saw the movie first, you guys. I was aware of the movie first before I ever even did read the book. But yeah, the movie is what got me interested to read the book. But yeah, the movie starring Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise and little Kirsten Dunst. I love that movie. To me, I feel like it's a pretty good adaptation. Yeah, there's definitely some liberties taken and some changes, but yeah, I think for the most part, it's a very, very good adaptation. And you guys, if you're not aware, AMC has bought, I think, like the rights to the entirety of the Vampire Chronicles, so there is going to be an adaptation of Interview with the Vampire coming out sometime in 2022 on AMC, which I am very, very excited about. I'm very curious to see what a TV show is going to look like. And I guess a big question, am I ever going to read the rest of this series? Because I think when I was on Goodreads, because I was trying to look up on Goodreads before I started doing this review, how many books are there? Are there about like 13 books in the series? Something like that, 12 or 13 books. I have never really had an interest to read the rest of the Vampire Chronicles books. I don't know what it is. I just really love Interview with the Vampire as it is. I think it can definitely stand as a standalone. You don't need the rest of the series or anything. And yeah, from what I hear, that the Vampire Chronicles, there are some really good books in there, but there's also like some really, really bad ones, especially ones that like pop up like later in the series, is my understanding. So yeah, it's like I don't know how I feel about that if I ever want to try and tackle reading the rest of the series, because I feel like if I did, it would taint somehow my enjoyment of this book, and I don't want this book to be destroyed by reading all the other books, you know. But yeah, if you're someone who's read all the Vampire Chronicle books, I mean, how do you feel about them? Are there some that I could skip, you know, and maybe skip to other ones that might be better, you know? I'm very curious. You know, someone's like more professional opinion when it comes to the Vampire Chronicles. So you guys, that is it for my thoughts and feelings on my reread of Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. I loved this reread. I'm so glad that the book still held up for me, that I still enjoyed it. It still just caught my attention and gave me chills and whatnot. So yeah, you guys, have you read Interview with the Vampire? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Just let me know your feelings down below. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye, guys.